cybersecurity by National Bank of Fujairah. We are indeed very delighted that you are with us, joining us today afternoon. Just a personal experience, I always thought that cybersecurity was important, but something kind of distant from me, and it's something which will never happen to me. But just a few months back, I got an email from a scamster telling me that my personal credentials and some details are with him and that he would release them in the public web, and to prevent that, I need to deposit a few bitcoins on a particular account. That was an eye-opener for me. That really opened my eyes, and it made me realize it was a jolt that this is not something which you just listen to or you kind of read about or see in movies maybe. It's something which can happen to each one of us. So good afternoon again. Welcome to this webinar. My name is Ashish Gokhale. I am the unit head for transaction banking in National Bank of Fujairah. And today, my role is simply like you. I want to gain more knowledge. I will be asking questions on your behalf to our expert panelists. Having said that, let's look at who our expert panelists are today. Our first panelist is Mr. Mirza Asrar Beg. Mirza, can we have your camera, please? Mr. Mirza Asrar Beg is a serial entrepreneur, business builder. He heads the first and only cyber security research and development tech company in the Arab world. He is best recognized as the founder and CEO of CTM 360 in Bahrain, a cyber threat security management company, and IT Matrix in Saudi, information security company. Welcome, Mirza. Welcome to the webinar. Thanks for joining us. Our second expert is Sheikh Shadab Nawaz. Shadab, he is a director in KPMG and a cyber security professional with 14 years of experience. He is expert in working in different environments across multiple industries with majority of exposure in the financial services sector. He has delivered to his credit complex cyber security projects across multiple geographies, including Middle East, India, Southeast Asia. Welcome, Shadab. We are delighted to have you. Welcome.
Pleasure to be here. Hello, everyone.
And last but not the least, our very own Hari Prasad Chede. Hari is the information security and risk management, information security head in the National Bank of Fujairah. He's a seasoned IT security, information security risk management professional with more than 20 years of experience. He is with the financial industry for the past 15 years, also past president of ISACA, if I'm correct, ISACA, UAE, and one of the key members of the bank's digital initiatives. Welcome, Hari. Thanks as always for leading this and joining us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish.
Now guest, just based after the bitter experience which I had, I kind of just researched a little bit on what this cybersecurity is all about and what are the issues around it. And I was astonished. Recently, I just read a report from IBM, which says on data breach, the global average cost of data breaches is in the range of $3.86 million. Now, I'm not an expert, so I don't need, it's not about me. So I'll just direct my first question to Mirza. Just especially, Mirza, in light of the current pandemic, people are working from home, offices are struggling, or maybe now settled, but initially struggled to give remote connectivity to all its employees. So all this situation, what is this current status of cyber threats which are happening today in the world and especially in the Middle East? If you can kind of set the context to this discussion with that overview. Mirza.
Thank you, Ashish. I'll try my best to do so. First of all, thank you, NBF and Hari and Ashish to have me here on this panel. Your question rightly was to set up the stage in the sense of what are the cyber threats, what's happening currently around us. So let me first start by giving you the three categories of the threat actors in the highest level. We have one category which is the cyber war, where there is state-sponsored. Then the next one is cyber espionage. And Then the third one is the cyber crime. For today's talk, I'm going to focus on cyber crime. I'm not going to discuss the first two ones. When we come to the world of cyber crime, what we need to understand is that it is, as you rightly said, it's very high number per data breach. You mentioned, I think, some 1 million per data breach. If I tell you about the total losses, it's astonishing, really. 3 years back, they said the world lost altogether about, in terms of monetary loss and the time loss, they lost about $2 billion in 1 year. And now they're estimating next year, 2021, the world will be losing something like $6 trillion. So the amount is really very huge. Now, what is going on? Why are we losing this war? And what are these threats? Especially now with COVID situation, the kind of vulnerability because of working from home has exponentially increased as well. So let me just talk about a few of those threats first. Number one, which is in fact, I think globally the highest one when we talk about cybercrime in terms of number when you go to corporate companies, is BEC, Business Email Compromise. We also call this man in the mail, like man in middle, man in the email. What happens in this fraud? And it's going on, by the way, every day in the Arab world as well. Globally, I think the losses are about $26 billion this year. So what happens in BEC? In BEC, there is a customer and there is a vendor. So any party could be a vendor, any party is a customer. So one party has to make a payment to another party. The scammers, they spend time to understand, and they spend time to also breach into an email system of one individual from where they can learn that which organization is paying to which organization for what work. Once they understand that, and it takes time, I mean, they could spend like 6 months trying to do so. There are cyber crime offices, you can say, where people go just to do this the whole day. They will identify the target. They will identify and work together to figure out what is the business chain between them. And then they will set up a bogus look-alike domain for one of those organizations in between. And then from that one, knowing what exactly the transaction would happen, they will send an email to the target organization saying, for this particular business and for this particular invoice, please change the payment, not in this account, rather in another account. And the money transfer goes through. Sometimes you wonder, how is it possible nobody is checking? It does happen. And the amount which are transferred are in millions of dollars. One major oil company in the Arab world, 3 years back, they sent out $30 million payment to, they were thinking to the right vendor, but they sent it out to the scammers. And on average, these kind of payments in millions of dollars, and we deal with it as a company, we come across this in across all the Arab world, that people will end up losing in millions of dollars. And then they get very, of course, they get the whole organization and the management, they don't understand that how is it possible for somebody to come in between. What they don't realize is this happens over a time. There are documents out there which you don't realize. My own staff could be putting a document out there on a document sharing site just because they think that through email a large size file will not go away. So they will put it out there in a Dropbox and say, ask somebody to share it. And they don't realize that the whole world is looking at that. Sometimes they upload the documents to check them for malware from home to VirusTotal, not realizing that the same file is now accessible by anybody on the internet. So they can see exactly what transaction and what is going on.
Okay, thanks, Mirza. I mean, just on that point, first of all, thank you so much. At least I have got 2 more acronyms to my list of multiple acronyms. BEC, business email compromise, and man in mail, if I got it correct, right? MIM,
Correct.
man in mail. That at least I have got that, two more acronyms. First of all, just for the attendees, we are going to have a separate Q&A session later on, maybe for 5-10 minutes. But I encourage you all, this is not a presentation, or we are not putting up any slides during this webinar. This is more interactive session. We are going to have a conversation with our panelists. So any questions, this is about you. So any questions you want to be addressed, please feel free to keep the questions flowing as and we go along. It's my job to pick up the questions and put it up to the panelist. So one question which I see, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to make one more quick point, because this happened just yesterday in UAE. Ransomware, where the attackers are actually going in, finding a vulnerability in your server, in your systems, taking files, and then encrypting your servers and saying, pay us so much money, otherwise we'll dump the files. Just yesterday, a big dump was put out there in UAE for a UAE company, and it had a lot of confidential information. It is good that they refuse to pay the money, because if you refuse to pay the money, they will put it out there. Okay? It's fine, but I mean, not to encourage them, one should not actually pay them. But this is a big issue which people need to realize also, that how the whole track of this ransomware happens. I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mirza, for really setting up that context. There's one question, I mean, I think to make this more relevant to what we are in today, maybe I'll risk and put this to Shadab. Shadab, specifically in the current scenario, customers are saying all banks are pushing them, and it's indeed required that they should be transacting digitally, they should be going online banking, mobile banking, nobody should be coming to the branches, giving physical instructions. But what is the industry doing? So what are banks doing to build that trust that customers can go and trust this? Because again, with after all what Mirza has said, that there are threats. So what are the banks doing to build customers' trust so that they can come onto these channels and platforms and give their details or transact financially on these platforms from the banks? Shadab.
Thanks for that question. I'll try to answer that question in terms of three main trends that we have seen. So you've heard Mirza Beg talking about the recent cybersecurity trends, and your question is quite relevant, that customers trust to use the digital channels of the bank. I'll talk about how financial institutions are giving that trust to their customers across these different channels. This is mainly based upon...
Shadab, sorry, I think your voice is cracking. Maybe you can turn off your video.
Sure, let me try and do that. Is it better now?
Yeah, much better.
Okay, sorry for that. So I was talking about how financial institutions or banks are trying to build that trust across different digital channels. And I was saying this is mainly based upon three trends that you've seen in the financial services industry. The number one trend is around the regulatory landscape. The regulatory landscape is hugely evolving in the financial services industry, and it's becoming increasingly fragmented and complex. And this represents a key driver of change across the global financial services sector. Now, we've seen some of these trends even globally. Like, for example, in the UK, there are regulations around how does one conduct penetration testing on banking channels. We have seen frameworks around how bank builds sufficient operational resilience if there are a cyber attack. In the US, we have seen regulations coming out from SEC that are driven around good practices. We have seen regulations coming out from key states like New York, driving sufficient cybersecurity in the banks. In the UAE, we have seen huge requirements around GDPR, NIS directive, as well as PSD2, the open banking standard. So there are a lot of frameworks and guidelines and regulatory requirements that you've seen globally. Similarly, in the UAE, we have seen multiple regulatory requirements around cybersecurity. I can take some examples. Like, for example, we have seen UAE Information Assurance Standard as one of the key requirements. We have seen requirements in terms of how to build security around digital channels. We have seen requirements around card data security. security around SWIFT systems, security around security requirements around email and web channels that bank implements. Also, very soon we may have regulatory requirements coming around cloud, third-party security, as well as data protection. So one thing that banks are doing to build the trust is investing heavily in complying to this multiple cybersecurity requirements that regulators are asking a bank to do. Managing cybersecurity regulatory requirement requires a careful strategy in line with a business risk appetite and a future commercial objective. So both the business objectives and the risk appetite needs to be taken into account while devising the right cybersecurity strategy. And we have witnessed that ownership of regulatory risk is more and more transitioning towards a C-suite level person, and most of the banks, even locally, have a C-suite level person who is overseeing the information security, and that drives a lot of commitment, and that makes sure that the digital trust is there across different channels. And the second trend that I would like to talk about, and that we have witnessed also globally and locally within the banks, is around digital transformation, and mainly focusing on areas like building omni-channel experience, integrating with fintech companies, or competition with the non-banking players. If I take some examples around these three, for example, to secure omni-channel, banks are seeking to accommodate bespoke customer preferences. Like, for example, if a bank is implementing omni-channel and it has 3 different channels for customer to interact, it wants to provide similar security, similar customer experience across all these different channels. So there are certain key investments around customer identity and access management that bank is implementing, and that is a key to deliver secure omni-channel experience to the customer. And that is one way of building good trust among customers. Also, for integration with fintech companies, lot banks, even locally, are trying to integrate with these new startups, fintech companies who are bringing in new capabilities around blockchain, cloud, robotic process automations, and things like that. And that alleviates the requirement around third-party security risk management, which also banks are focusing heavily to build the trust. Also, locally here, banks are facing a lot of competition from non-banking players, like, for example, Google, Amazon, Apple has their own payment services nowadays. So how does bank, compete with these players, these non-banking players? So now CISOs in the bank are really thinking hard in terms of how to optimize the cost and still be competitive. So as banks seek to leverage their customer data as an additional revenue stream, privacy of the customer data has become hugely relevant. And privacy is a key pillar around building digital trust. So that's the second trend around building digital trust. And finally, I would like to end by talking about the cybersecurity threat landscape. And we have all heard Mirza Baig talk about the threat landscape, and that's the third trend. It's hugely evolving, as you have heard Mirza talking about it. With the opportunity to have massive returns, cyber criminals are increasingly targeting financial institutions, and this has been exacerbated by the digital innovations, the digital transformation that you have seen, which have introduced new vulnerabilities, but at the same time, CISOs are trying to mitigate those vulnerabilities and trying to cope up with the evolving threat landscape. And we've heard some of those from Mirza Baig today. So banks are heavily investing in securing against these cyber threats, and by doing so, they're also trying to build enough digital trust across these channels. So I guess in summary, protecting or complying to the regulatory requirement, making sure that the digital channels are secure, and really securing themselves against the evolving cyber threat landscape are the 3 key things that banks are doing to build sufficient digital trust across different channels.
Thanks, Shalabh. So what I hear is banks and regulators are doing quite a lot, and also I hear that customer experience is not being forgotten. So that's good to hear indeed. And I think with that, it sets the stage nicely for Hari. Hari, first of all, nice jacket. And I think the question which comes to my mind, obviously, after what Shadab has said is, what is National Bank of Fujairah doing, especially in the last 6 months to 9 months, about this whole aspect about building trust and digital channels? Over to you, Hari.
Thank you, Ashish, for query and a comment, of course. Quick one. It's as a bank, National Bank of Fujairah is always try to give the customer first when they are trying to prepare any strategy. Similarly, from the cybersecurity perspective, also before the pandemic started, we have taken some initiative where we have observed the kind of threats that are happening, like what Mirza told, and what is happening in the market also. Keeping in this mind, we wanted to eliminate first and foremost against password dependency and OTP dependency for the customers, whether it is a retail customer or whether it is a corporate customer. They just need to remember their user ID. That's it. We implemented advanced authentication system which can take care of those credentials without compromising any of the security element. This is not only for the authentication, but we also take care of multiple other things, whether something like whether the person is used the same device that he is used to log in for his online transactions, and or whether he is logging from the same location. So like that, we monitor multiple parameters. So we devised, and this is monitoring is not only on one specific channel, it is on the multiple, we aggregated the omni-channel approach we introduced. Definitely, yes, when the pandemic has started, we also parallelly, our digital initiatives also started by the time. When the pandemic has started, one thing we have observed is our attacks on this part of the region has, especially on the financial institution, including the bank, has tripled the kind of attacks that are targeting us. Because of this very simple reason is the key staff are accessing the bank core systems remotely, right? We're talking about a treasurer accessing the core systems remotely. And this has given a different kind of risks to the organization. A small risk I can say is by enabling this, we have reduced, we made a very thin line between a personal and the professional environment here, right? Because in the personal, in the organization, you may not get disturbed with the other circumstances, but in the home, you might get disturbed with the other circumstances, which might cause the operational issues and at the same time cybersecurity issues perspective. And we have observed this also increase significantly. Small example I'll give you is a classic WhatsApp message is to flow during the pandemic situation, asking that this is a message from Ministry of the Health, and you are diagnosed with the COVID. You need to click on this link and update your Emirates ID details immediately. Just imagine, a normal person, he will definitely feel that, oh my God, already they're in a pandemic situation. They are all worried, not going out from home, managing the house, and at the same time, such a kind of message is there. First thing they do is immediately click on it. So this is a very classic kind of the risk we have observed been increasing. And so keeping in this mind back, what we've done is we have ensured that our customers are all prepared. So we are keep on sending multiple awareness. Awareness is the key. The culture change is the key during these kind of circumstances. So we have enabled all our business people to communicate to our customers what all the kind of risks that organizations face and how they're doing it. In fact, this is also one of our effort to communicate such a thing to the customers. And we have created a booklet, which you might have seen in our emailer, which contains all the measures what an end-user organization need to do it. Apart from this, in order for the customer to get an assurance on the services that we provide to them, maybe online banking or internet banking, we have increased our frequency of our cybersecurity assessments on these services. Let's assume that previously we used to do every quarter. We increased that to the daily level. Because at the end of the day, we would like to know much in advance than the adversary what is a cyber attacks. So the organization theme we kept is a cyber resiliency is the key. We can't stop all the attacks, but we should be prepared what to do if at all any attack happens. So that is the key. starting from the board levels to the everybody. That is a key. The cyber resilience is the key, and we are all prepared, and we have prepared a proper playbooks, what all different things, each and every roles and responsibility we need to do. So that is on this one, and we continue our strategy on 3 key topics. One is we will ensure that our controls are around the data, because we are using as Shadab told, that we'll be using multiple third parties, we'll be getting into the cloud, we will be getting into the lot of digital information. Identity is the key, and the protection around the data is the key, and the third element is the culture. These are the 3 key elements our cybersecurity strategy is rotating around. That's as of now, Ashish. And
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hari. Thank you. Attendees, I think please start. I'm already getting a few questions, so I'll start taking the questions. So please put your questions in the Q&A tab or in the chat. We will start taking your questions. I'm getting a few questions, if I may say, around maybe this discussion till now seems to be focused, if I may say, around maybe financial institutions and large corporates who have the resources, who have the infrastructure, who have people like you all. A lot of individuals and a lot of small enterprises who may not have that. So what do they do? So maybe let's have in a different way. These days, rapid fire seems to be the name of the game in a lot of talk shows. So maybe if I can quickly start with Mirza, I'll put you in the spotlight and maybe ask you, what are your top 3 things which a person or a small enterprise can do today to maybe protect himself with 80%? I mean, obviously, I don't think you can protect 100%, but to reasonably protect himself, what are the easiest top 3 things? And I'll come to you, Hari and Shadab, maybe if you want to add something to that list. Yeah. Quick one, yeah.
Ashish, then let me not talk about, as you rightly said, technology. All the big companies have technologies and things in place. One aspect is the human element. So let's look at the human element and think of what is it that we should do or we should not do. Okay. There are so many, Hari rightly mentioned that aspect where people are sending you links saying that you have been diagnosed and upload immediately. It's all if the human element is smart enough to know that there could be a scam here and not upload, and that you can safeguard yourself. You don't need any technology for that. Similarly, there are so many more of those attacks, and in fact, even the corporate attacks have a human element in the chain of the attack. There are multiple pieces in the attack, and one of them is always the human element. So, and I would also like to say that human element is the best piece in security if we leverage from it. If we really leverage from it, even for a corporate organizations, they don't have 4 or 5 people or 10 or 15 people in information security department. Rather, they have the full thousands of employees as their information security department. Now, just one more fraud, and what you could do for that is there is a lot of this work from home nowadays. And in that work from home, you will get these kind of offers where people are trying to tell you, you can stay at home and you can do work from. These are all frauds. Or they're telling you, look, you can sit at home and these are binary option investments. Somehow they're very big in the Arab world. Everywhere I go, I even see advertisements where genuine websites are letting people advertise there, and the advertising company is putting an ad saying, how can you make so many thousands of dollars every day? Hey, it's too good to be true. You should know it is not true. Don't fall for those scams. You know, social engineering, if somebody really wants to learn a little more about it, you should follow Kevin Mitnick. Kevin Mitnick was the world's first renowned hacker in 80s. And he used to say that there is no technology I need to hack anyone. I can just talk to them and they'll give me the information. So you really, the hacker doesn't really need, you see, pieces of technology. My question to all the audience here is, everybody is using broadband at home, and especially now working from home, that broadband is being used to access their office systems. How many of them have ever looked into the security setup of the broadband router? And none, I'm pretty sure none of them know even the password required to do the configuration. Somebody from the ISP came in, they set it up, they put a default password and they walked away. And thousands of people in the world who know what are those default passwords can access that router. So these are the smaller, this is what you need to learn on a little bit on the technology side, not just being on the social engineering side. And if I go a little, Ashish, can I go a little more on some of the points?
Maybe one more point, Mirza.
Okay. The most important point I want to make is the two-factor of authentication. Two-factor authentication means that you're using so much of social media. People are using Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter, whatever you're using. All of these vendors allow you a second factor of password. But because you don't know, you're not setting it up. Hence, it's so easy for somebody to hijack your account. And once they hijack your account, it opens the door for so many other frauds through which they target to all your people who you are connected with. So please ensure that you have two factors of authentication.
Okay. Thank you, Mirza. I can see Hari vigorously nodding, so it looks like he's already wanted to say the same thing. But anything to add, Hari, quickly on this same point? Any other point
yes.
you would like to?
I give 3 more points. Mirza is absolutely right, and he actually did very good when the second factor. So first and foremost is back up your data. All right, a lot of SMEs, or not only SMEs, in many of the individuals as well, they don't know how to back up their own data, or they don't do it. They feel that when everything is there on mobile or everything is on my Gmail, that is good enough. Please back up your data. We are talking about resiliency here. If my data is corrupted, how I can take out the data. Okay, that is one. Next is, please ensure there is a very little expenditure. There is nothing free in this world. Please spend on minimal antivirus or anti-malware. That is very much necessity in these days, including, I don't think so, how many of us actually installing antivirus or anti-malware on your mobile phones. Please buy a nominal which hardly costs around $30 to $40 or maybe $100 max. Please ensure that one that is there. And have your smartphones always safe. Many of the businesses are not only using the laptops anymore, they are getting into their smart devices. Protect your smart devices. These are the 3 key things which I wanted to cover here.
Shadab, anything from your side? Any quick point on this? Do you have anything in mind?
No, I think Hari and Mirza has covered all the points here.
Okay. We are getting a couple of questions. So, okay, one person is interested in what happened to my story. So people are interested in my story. So, I told in the beginning, I got a mail from a scamster saying that he has a lot of my personal data and he would post it on the public web. And if I don't want that, I should be giving him some Bitcoin. So thankfully, I was shocked. I was scared. I had a mix of all these emotions for a long time. But finally, I did call the Dubai police helpline and they were very sweet and they helped me and they kind of told me that this has been a scam mail going, so I should not be bothered by it. But having now seen these questions, maybe I'll ask this to Hari again. I'll come back to you. Now, while we have talked a lot about prevention, now even if we take all the precautions, we fall sick. So similarly, even after doing all these things, at an individual, at a small business, at a large corporate, if something happens, some incident or the way it happened to me, something happens, what should the reaction be? Maybe if you can distinguish from a large corporate and a small enterprise to an individual, maybe the reactions are different or same.
Ashish, this I will map it to the resources that the people of the organization have. So the big organizations, definitely they will be having a cybersecurity management program. They have resiliency and all the stuff. But first and foremost thing which we need to do is we all talk about what is the impact that your organization had. So is it impacted your crown jewels? What are the critical assets that it has impacted you? You should be able to know that one. And to know that one, some organizations takes almost 200 days, but small organizations, it is very important like this. So if it is having any impact, extortion, or whether it is having a ransomware, or any kind of this financial loss. First and foremost thing, in UAE, at least you can report to a website called ecrime.ae. Whether you are a SME or whether it is an individual, whether it is a large corporate, report to ecrime.ae. And if you feel that one that is having a financial loss in it, please report to respective financial institutions immediately. So there may be a chance for them to talk to correspondent banks and try to talk to them about real fraud that has happened to you. And as soon as the incident happens, you should start doing this, because every second that you save during this time matters a lot on your impact. And these are the two key things which I strongly advise for anybody. And never pay ransomware without having a proper direction from an appropriate cybersecurity professional, or we can get into the insurance teams or the law enforcement. We can take the help of the law enforcement for that particular purpose. These are the two key things which I wanted to advise, if at all anybody face on the cybercrime.
Yeah, Mirza, you had something to say.
Yeah, Ashish, I just wanted to add something to your story, where you said that somebody came across, approached you. I just want to give you the background so people understand it. Most of us are using our email addresses across all the social media. We are not doing anything wrong. The social media gets breached. Facebook gets breached. LinkedIn gets breached. Dropbox, they get breached. And then the attacker takes all the IDs and passwords and publishes it. Now, if I'm a scammer, I can see the ID and password there. You may not realize it. Then I'll send you an email saying, I was in your computer. I recorded you doing something wrong. And here, I can show you that I know your password, and I'll put that password which I found from there. And then I'll demand that you should pay me so much money. Otherwise, I will tell all your friends and show this out of your computer. This is how the scam works. So it is completely bogus. Totally ignore it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mirza. One question, maybe I'll put it to Shadab. Shadab, if you're there. Kind of a different question which user has asked is, okay, since you talked a lot about trust, now from the other side, now, in fact, once I visited a customer, he took a bowl of tokens and put it in front of me. Look, I'm dealing with 6 banks. Each one has a different square, circle, round shaped token with different way you have. And now with the pandemic, you have this remote video calling apps, you have emails, you have, if somebody wants a caps password, somebody wants a special character, somebody wants mother's name, father's name, what all you, these days even newspapers, they have their own login credentials, you need to go to access them. So it's becoming very complex today to even remember and manage this whole multitudes of logins and passwords. So how, is there any solution to this from a user perspective? And is there from a regulator or industry perspective anything happening to standardize and make it kind of simpler so that breaches don't happen and user doesn't become lax on this?
Sure. Thanks, Ashish. I guess 2 parts to the question. So one is, of course, from the user perspective, it's always the best way to create a complex password and still remember is probably your nursery rhymes or a phrase that you love or a song that you love. Think about that one single sentence that really rings a bell on your head. So think about that one single sentence and probably try and build a complex password around it so that you remember it and you don't have to forget it. And once it is complex, you can use it across your different usage. Another advice is that another advice is to create different passwords. So you really have to think through what different types of usage that you do on internet. Is social media one usage? Accessing banking system is another usage. Using your corporate office systems is another usage. So if these are 3 different usage, you really have to think through 3 different passwords. Don't mix and mash. Don't use password that you use to access financial systems in your social media. Don't do that, because one of the examples that Mirza Beg said that there are so many hacks that are happening on different websites. People get hold of those passwords. Now imagine if you're using the same password to access your financial system, then you're gone. So never mix and mash and really understand what is your usage profile and create your passwords accordingly. So if I summarize, number 1, think about a quick phrase that rings a bell in your head and use those as a complex password. Really think about your profile of activity and create different passwords. I guess that's from the user point of view. And to your question, is there an easier way of managing this password? Yes, there are a lot of freeware tools, secure tool, which we call as password vault, which you can use. So if you're using a home PC and you have, let's say, Chrome browser, there are a lot of password vaults that are available in the Chrome browser. You can click on the add extension feature of Chrome browser, and you can search for password vault. And what this password vault does is it auto-generates password on your behalf, and it also backs up those passwords and encrypts it on their own site. So if you're using a third-party password wall, it doesn't mean that anybody can see your password. Nobody can see your password because those are encrypted, and they take backup. But there is always a risk. Now you're allowing a third-party tool to store your password. So you see, there is always this risk and reward situation. So I would say for me, try to figure out the complex phrase that rings a bell and use that as a password rather than using a password wall. But if you want to have different password for each different website, use a password wall. So you have an option. At least for social media, you can use password wall. It doesn't matter. But for passwords related to bank system, don't use password wall. Use something that you remember. So that's my suggestion. And I guess as the world is moving forward, we are probably getting into a passwordless situation. So slowly you will not require password. The system will recognize you based upon your fingerprint, based upon your facial identification. Like for example, iPhone. If you pick up an iPhone, you don't need to punch in your password. It recognizes you. Slowly the biometric will play a huge role. Even on your laptop, the biometric will play a huge role. Even the password, the whole world is moving towards passwordless, and it is already implemented a lot in US and UK already. A lot of organizations have implemented that, and this also gives a lot of advantage. So, for example, tomorrow if you fly down to India or to some other country, you will be challenged with further questions before, and a system will allow you in. It will not ask you to type in a password, but it will challenge you with some questions, and which you'll have to answer. So it is securing your entire adoption of system. So I guess passwordless is the way forward. In 5 to 10 years, I don't think anybody of us will use passwords slowly. But as of now, I guess those are the two options. Remember a complex password or use password vault.
Thank you, Shadab. So I wouldn't be surprised if many of our passwords are going to be Baba Black Sheep or something in a few days. And I'm waiting for the day where we will not have passwords. I mean, this is my personal grouse against this whole passwords. Yeah, Hari, I mean, I'll come to you. In fact, there is a question. I'll allow you to respond to the earlier question. And also there is a question specifically for you. Clearly somebody is not very satisfied with what maybe you talked earlier, and he wants to challenge you further on how is NBF different? You mentioned a lot about what NBF is doing. So how is NBF different from other players in the industry? What is its distinguishing? And specifically, can NBF protect the customer if their account is breached or some incident happens? So maybe you can throw a little bit light, and also maybe I'll allow you to, if you have some quick point on the earlier question. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Rather than me talking about how we differentiate from the others, we are talking about how we are protecting our customers. So here, when we talk about the authentication, let's talk about how we identify a customer. So during the registration, we map the user to their specific mobile. Okay. So by any chance, if that mobile is compromised, if a mobile has having a malware, we will come to know immediately, because we have that kind of mechanism inbuilt in our app. We will come to know exactly that mobile is. Similarly, we will also come to know that one, if that mobile, if let's assume that I type a small example, I can say that one, I was able to log into online banking platform within, let's say, 20 seconds. All right. And when I see my backend, on average, Ashish logs into online banking 20 seconds on average. Suddenly, that average goes to the 1 second if it is an automated attack on your mobile, or somebody takes over your listings, it may be 1 second, or somebody tried multiple times. Okay. And when they're trying manually, they may take more time than 20 seconds. All right. So then we will exactly know that one, how much time we are doing it. In general, what happens in any of the financial institution, and this kind of thing, we call it as a deviation from the normal pattern. When this kind of deviations happens, Generally, we call it as a fraud. After the transaction happens, then people will come back to you. If you talk about any credit card fraud or something, what happens? Your money is lost, but at that time they will call you and ask you, saying that one whether it is you have done this transaction or not. But here, what we do is we don't allow the person to perform a transaction immediately. Rather, we ask for an additional authentication with them. That additional authentication depends upon the kind of malicious activity the people are using, a kind of malicious, a kind of deviation from the regular pattern we have. We will be asking that authentication. So we have the authentication from a normal PIN to the biometric levels. If you see our mobile app, it has all these levels inbuilt into it. But currently, for every transaction, especially for the corporates, we are ensuring that when it has to be a compulsory second factor authentication, and for the retail, we given an option both for the biometric and business. So this is a key differentiator. And also, whenever an adversary trying to attack you, they will try to take your password or OTP. But in our cycle, where in the bank cycle, we don't have a password or OTP. So only one kind of attack that can be possible, provided if, as a customer, if I given my mobile, if I given my debit card, if I'm given my debit card PIN, if I give my OTP, can a hack happens? Yes, it happens. Is it possible for an organization to recognize? The chances are very low that certain kind of organizations to recognize. Still, we have a pattern matching. Using that matching, still there is a possibility for us to alert. But you have given all what you have. It's like that you are putting all your assets of your home and the outside of your home, and you tell them by early morning all the assets should be there, which is not possible. Okay, that is from the response. Hope that is satisfies the question of this guy.
Yeah, hopefully, yes, yes. There's one more question. I think it might deserve a webinar in itself, but maybe if I can ask Mirza to take this. Mirza, it's about, a few years back, I always thought cloud was something which I painted in the sky. But now everybody is talking about the cloud these days. So cloud adoption by the industry, specifically in the finance area, is at an all-time high. So, quickly, if you can, maybe in a couple of points, what are the key things which companies need to take care of before moving into the cloud from a security, data, from this perspective?
Okay. See, in fact, if anybody is moving into the cloud, one of the big advantages that cloud takes care of so much of the security. So the most important thing is that understand how cloud can be leveraged for security. So cloud not only would allow you to bring in and remove from you the burden of setting up certain, like the updates of the software. Cloud can do that for you if you use it rightly. Like the antivirus, cloud can do it for you. Like the IDS, cloud, again, depending on how you can use it to your advantage, you can remove a lot of the security burden of management and the operational security over to the cloud provider. That is, if you really, what the problem is that security is always an afterthought. So what you do is the business pushes, the people will design it, they will deploy it without really looking at security. And that's from where the problem starts. That all that advantage you could have taken in the very beginning, you lose it. So my advice is normally the same thing when you go like into the cloud, that look for the security leverage first, look from that side first.
Okay, thanks,
I hope
Mirza.
I answered your...
Yeah, I think, as I said, I think this deserves a webinar in itself. So, given the time, I'm sure this is quite satisfactory. I think we have run out of questions. So, unless any guest, maybe we'll wait for a quick 1 more minute to see if any guest has any questions. And I don't think so. Okay, so I think, we are almost reaching the end of the time. So, I think it's a good time to pause. So, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mirza. Thank you, Shadab. Thank you, Hari. And thank you to myself, Ashish. Thank you for this session. I hope all the guests have an enlightening session and learned something about it. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in many more such webinars. Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a nice weekend, guys. Have a nice weekend.
Goodbye, everyone. Thanks, NBF.
Be cyber safe. Thank you.
Bye.